Her head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She kept her eyes closed, trying to piece together the fragments of the previous night, but they slipped through her consciousness like water through cupped hands. The charity gala, the marble floors, crystal chandeliers, champagne glasses that cost more than her monthly rent. Emma's body felt heavy against sheets that were impossibly soft. Nothing like the worn cotton she'd bought from the discount store on Flatbush Avenue. These felt like silk, cool and smooth against her skin. The mattress beneath her seemed to cradle her perfectly, as if it had been designed specifically for the contours of her body. Slowly, reluctantly, she opened her eyes. The ceiling above her was high, at least 12 feet, painted in a pristine white that seemed to glow in the morning light. A modern chandelier hung from the center, all clean lines and geometric precision, so different from the dated fixtures in her apartment building. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she turned her head slowly, taking in her surroundings. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated one entire wall of the bedroom, offering an unobstructed view of Manhattan that made her stomach drop. She could see the East River glittering in the morning sun, the bridges stretching across the water like steel ribbons, and the unmistakable skyline that she'd only ever seen from a distance. This wasn't Brooklyn. This wasn't even close to any neighborhood she could afford to visit, let alone wake up in. The room itself was enormous, larger than her entire apartment. Minimalist furniture in shades of charcoal and cream filled the space. A sleek dresser along one wall, 2 armchairs positioned near the windows, a door that presumably led to a closet or bathroom. Everything screamed wealth, taste, and a life so far removed from her own that it might as well have existed on another planet. Emma's heart began to race, a cold panic spreading through her chest like ice water. She sat up quickly, too quickly, and immediately regretted it as the room tilted and her headache intensified. She pressed her hand to her forehead, trying to steady herself, trying to think. That's when she saw it. On her left hand, 4th finger, a ring caught the sunlight and threw it back in brilliant flashes. Emma stared at it, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. The band was platinum, she could tell from the cool, silvery sheen, and set with a diamond so clear and perfectly cut that it seemed to capture and refract every ray of light in the room. It wasn't ostentatious or gaudy. It was elegant, timeless, and clearly worth more money than she'd ever seen in her life. Her breathing became shallow, rapid. She tried to pull the ring off, but it fit perfectly, as if it had been sized specifically for her finger. The metal felt warm from her skin, solid and real and undeniably there. No, 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 Emma whispered, her voice hoarse and unfamiliar. This isn't happening. She threw back the covers, silk sheets in a deep charcoal gray, and discovered she was wearing a white button-down shirt that definitely wasn't hers. It was too large, clearly meant for someone much taller, and it smelled faintly of expensive cologne, cedar, bergamot, and something darker she couldn't identify. Emma's bare feet hit the cool hardwood floor as she stood, her legs unsteady. She needed to find her clothes. She needed to leave. She needed to understand what had happened, and how she'd ended up here. The memories were there, just out of reach, like trying to recall a dream that faded more with each passing second. She remembered the gala at the Mandarin Oriental. She'd been working it, serving champagne to New York's elite in their designer gowns and tailored suits. She remembered being tired, stressed about the stack of medical bills on her kitchen counter. She remembered stepping outside for air, the cool October night on her skin, and then nothing, a blank space where the rest of the night should have been. Emma's panic intensified. She moved toward what she hoped was the bedroom door, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. But before she could reach it, the door opened, and a man stepped inside. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to question his place in the world. Tall, at least 6'2", with dark hair perfectly styled, wearing charcoal dress pants and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. His features were striking, strong jawline, dark eyes that seemed to miss nothing, and an expression of calm control that was somehow more intimidating than any display of emotion would have been. Emma froze, her hand instinctively reaching for something to defend herself with, finding nothing. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Who are you? Where am I?" The man's eyes traveled over her slowly, not in a way that felt predatory but assessing, as if he were cataloging every detail of her appearance, every micro-expression on her face. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep and measured, with the faintest hint of an accent she couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, softened by years in America. You don't remember? It wasn't a question. Remember what? Emma's voice rose, the fear finally breaking through. I don't know you. I don't know where I am. I need to leave. I need to check on your mother, he interrupted calmly. St. Vincent's Hospital, room 412. She's fine. Better than fine, actually. Her treatment started this morning. Emma felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. How do you know about my mother? How do you… Her voice caught. What did you say about her treatment? The man moved further into the room, and Emma instinctively stepped back. He noticed and stopped, maintaining the distance between them. Sit down, Emma. Please, you're safe here, I promise you that, but we need to talk and you look like you're about to collapse. How do you know my name? But even as she asked, Emma felt her legs weakening. The shock, the confusion, the headache, it was all too much. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands gripping the mattress. I know a lot about you, he said, his tone still maddeningly calm. I know you work 3 jobs, waitressing at Romano's, morning shifts at the coffee shop on Bedford Avenue, and catering events for prestige services. I know you've been trying to pay for your mother's cancer treatment for the past 8 months. I know you've maxed out 2 credit cards and taken out a loan you have no way of repaying. Each fact hit Emma like a physical blow. You've been watching me? Following me? I've been doing my homework, he corrected. There's a difference. That's not better. Emma's voice cracked. That's worse. Who are you? What do you want from me? The man reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward her. My name is Dante Moretti, and before you ask what I want, I think you should see this. Emma stared at the phone screen, her confusion deepening. It was a video time-stamped from the previous night. The setting was clearly upscale, a private lounge or club with leather seating and dim atmospheric lighting. And there, on the screen, was Emma herself. But this Emma was different from the terrified woman currently sitting on the bed. The Emma in the video was laughing, her face flushed and animated as she talked with the man who now stood before her, Dante. They sat close together on a leather sofa, and she seemed completely at ease, gesturing expressively as she spoke. At one point in the video, she leaned against him and he draped his arm casually over her shoulders. No, Emma whispered. I don't remember this. Dante swiped to another video. This one showed them dancing, if it could be called dancing. It was intimate, her body pressed against his, her arms around his neck, his hands on her waist. She was smiling up at him, saying something that made him lean down to hear her better. Stop, Emma said, her voice barely audible. Please stop. He lowered the phone. You agreed to be here, Emma. You chose this. I didn't choose anything. She stood abruptly, anger finally overwhelming the fear. I don't remember any of this. What did you do to me? Did you put something in my drink? Did you… I did nothing without your consent, Dante interrupted, his voice hardening slightly. You had 2 glasses of champagne over the course of 4 hours. You were stressed, exhausted, and desperate, yes, but you were not impaired. You made a choice. What choice? Emma demanded, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. What are you talking about? Dante walked to the dresser and picked up a folder she hadn't noticed before. He held it out to her. This choice. Emma took the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a contract printed on heavy, expensive paper. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out at her. Agreement between Dante Moretti and Emma Catherine Carter. Duration of 6 months. Financial compensation including, but not limited to, all medical expenses for Margaret Carter, residence provided, public appearances as required. And there, at the bottom of the 3rd page, was her signature. Emma stared at it, her heart pounding. That was definitely her handwriting. The way she looped the E in Emma, the distinctive slant of her letters. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would I sign this? What does this even mean? Dante moved to stand by the windows, his hands in his pockets, his profile outlined against the bright morning light. It means, Emma, that for the next 6 months, you are my wife. The folder slipped from Emma's hands and fell to the floor, papers scattering. You're… what? Not legally, he clarified, still gazing out at the city. Not on any government record, but to the outside world, to my business associates, to anyone who matters in my life, you are Mrs. Moretti. Emma felt like she was drowning, like the air in the room had become too thick to breathe. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. You can't just… People don't do this. This doesn't happen in real life. It happens more often than you'd think, Dante said quietly. Marriages of convenience, arrangements, deals. This is New York, Emma. Everything is negotiable. Not me, she said fiercely. I'm not negotiable. I don't care what that paper says. I don't care what those videos show. I am not staying here. I am not going to be part of whatever sick game this is. Dante turned to face her fully, and for the first time, she saw something shift in his expression. Not anger, but something deeper. Understanding, maybe, or regret. Your mother's first chemotherapy treatment started at 6 o'clock this morning, he said softly. Dr. Harrison Chen, one of the best oncologists on the East Coast, the same doctor who wrote you a letter 3 months ago saying he couldn't continue treating your mother until her outstanding balance was paid in full. Emma felt tears burning in her eyes. Don't you dare use my mother against me. I'm not using her, Dante said. I'm reminding you why you made this choice. You sat on that couch last night and you cried. You told me you'd been working 90-hour weeks and it still wasn't enough. You told me you were terrified you were going to lose her. And when I offered you a solution, you didn't hesitate. You signed that contract at 3 a.m, completely sober, completely aware of what you were doing. Then why don't I remember? Emma demanded, the tears finally spilling over. Why is everything from last night just gone? Dante's expression softened slightly. Stress. Exhaustion. Your body and mind were at their breaking point. The brain protects itself in strange ways. The memories will come back, Emma. They always do. Emma wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand, hating that she was crying in front of this stranger. Because that's what he was, no matter what any contract said. A stranger who somehow knew everything about her, who had somehow convinced her to agree to something she couldn't even remember. She looked down at the ring on her finger, watching it catch the light. Why? She asked quietly. Why me? If you wanted someone to pretend to be your wife, you could have anyone. Why would you choose me? Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, less controlled, more human. Because when I asked if you were willing to do whatever it took to save your mother, you looked me in the eye and said yes without hesitation. Because you didn't ask me what I wanted in return until after you'd already agreed. Because, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Because I needed someone real, someone who understood what it meant to fight for the people you love. Emma looked up at him, trying to see past the expensive clothes and the controlled demeanor, trying to understand who this man really was. What do you need a fake wife for? Appearances, he said simply. I have business interests that require a certain image, stability, respectability. A man with a wife is seen differently than a man alone. What kind of business? The kind that pays for experimental cancer treatments without question, Dante replied, not quite answering the question. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She thought about the luxury of this apartment, the casual way he'd arranged for her mother's treatment, the videos showing a private club that probably didn't even have a sign outside. You're not some regular businessman, are you? I'm a very successful businessman, Dante said carefully. How I became successful? That's complicated. Try me. He studied her for a moment, as if deciding how much to tell her. I own property throughout the city. I invest in various enterprises. I facilitate connections between people who need things and people who can provide them. Is all of it strictly legal? No. Am I hurting anyone? Also no. I exist in the gray areas, Emma. I always have. So you're... She couldn't quite bring herself to say it. I'm someone who gets things done, Dante finished. Someone who keeps his word. And I'm telling you now, your mother will receive the best possible care for the next 6 months, regardless of cost. After that, if you choose to walk away, the contract dissolves, but those 6 months, they're non-negotiable. Emma sank back onto the bed, her mind reeling. 6 months, half a year of her life, traded for her mother's survival. When she put it that way, it didn't seem like such a terrible deal. But the thought of being tied to this stranger, of playing a role she didn't understand in a world she knew nothing about, it terrified her. What would I have to do? She asked quietly. Specifically. Dante pulled out his phone again and began reading as if from a checklist. Attend social events with me. Dinner parties, charity galas, business meetings where a spouse's presence is expected. Stay here, in this apartment. Wear the ring. Answer to my name in public settings. Be convincing. And, in private? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dante's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. In private, You have your own bedroom, your own space. I won't touch you beyond what's necessary for appearances. Holding hands, my arm around you, that sort of thing. This is a business arrangement, Emma, not a romantic one. Emma felt an unexpected mix of relief and something else she didn't want to examine too closely. How do I know you'll keep your word? How do I know that once I'm here, you won't change the terms? Dante finished. You don't. You have to trust me. I don't even know you. No, he agreed. But your mother is receiving treatment right now. That's real. The money in your bank account, check your phone, I had it charged, it's on the nightstand, is real. The fact that your credit card debt has been paid in full is real. I've already kept my word, Emma. Now it's your turn. Emma reached for her phone with shaking hands. She unlocked it and opened her banking app, expecting to see the same depressing negative balance that had been there for months. Instead, she saw a number that made her gasp. $50,000 in her checking account. That's your signing bonus, Dante said. Spend it however you want. Save it. Send it to charity. I don't care. It's yours. And every month on the 1st, you'll receive another $25,000. Consider it a salary. Emma's head spun. In 6 months, she'd have $200,000. Enough to pay off all her debts, to get a better apartment, to have a safety net for the first time in her life. All she had to do was pretend to be married to a man who lived in the gray areas of legality and needed her for reasons he wouldn't fully explain. She thought about her mother, probably awake by now in her hospital room, probably wondering where Emma was. She thought about the texts Emma had sent her yesterday. I don't know how we're going to make this work, Mom. I'm so sorry. I'm trying. She thought about the resignation in her mother's voice when she'd replied, I know, sweetheart. You've done enough. Maybe it's just time to accept that some things aren't meant to be. Emma looked at the ring on her finger, then at Dante standing by the windows, then at the contract pages scattered on the floor. If I do this, she said slowly, I want to see my mother today. I want to explain this to her myself. Of course. Dante agreed immediately. We'll go this afternoon. I'll have some clothes brought up for you. Your size is 8, correct? Emma nodded, not even surprised anymore that he knew. And I want to keep my job at Romano's, at least for now. Dante's expression tightened slightly. That's not practical. You'll be needed here, available for events that may come up on short notice. Then the deal's off, Emma said, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. I've worked at Romano's for 3 years. They've been good to me. I'm not just disappearing without explanation. And I need, she paused, trying to articulate it, I need something that's mine, something real in all of this. For a long moment, Dante just looked at her. Then slowly, he nodded. Fine. 3 shifts a week, maximum. And if I need you for an event, the restaurant comes second. Deal. Then we have an agreement, Mrs. Moretti. He extended his hand. Emma stared at it. This final gesture that would seal her fate for the next 6 months. She thought about her mother, about the treatment that was happening right now, about the impossible weight that had been lifted from her shoulders. She thought about the videos she'd seen of herself, smiling and at ease with this stranger, making a choice her conscious mind couldn't remember but her body somehow had. She stood and took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. Emma is fine, she said quietly. I'm not ready for the other name yet. Something that might have been respect flickered in Dante's dark eyes. Emma, then. For now. He released her hand and gestured toward a door she hadn't noticed. That's your bathroom. Take your time. Get cleaned up. I'll have breakfast ready when you're done, and we'll go over the details of your new life. As he turned to leave, Emma called out, Dante? He paused in the doorway, looking back at her. Did I really say yes last night? Did I really want this? His expression was unreadable. You were desperate. I offered you hope. Whether you wanted it or simply needed it. Does it matter? He left before she could answer, the door closing softly behind him. Emma stood alone in the enormous bedroom, the Manhattan skyline glittering beyond the windows, a ring on her finger that felt both foreign and somehow right. She looked down at her left hand, watching the diamond catch the light, and whispered to the empty room, What did I do? But deep down, beneath the fear and confusion, beneath the shock of waking up in a life that wasn't hers, Emma knew the answer. She'd done exactly what she'd always done, whatever it took to protect the people she loved. The only difference was that this time, someone had been there to catch her when she fell. The question now was whether Dante Moretti would keep catching her, or whether he'd already gotten everything he needed, and she'd just traded one kind of desperation for another. The hot water cascaded over Emma's shoulders as she stood in the marble shower, her forehead pressed against the cool tile wall. The bathroom was larger than her bedroom back in Brooklyn, all pristine white marble, gold fixtures, and a rainfall showerhead that felt like standing under a warm waterfall. It was the kind of luxury she'd only seen in magazines, and yet she couldn't enjoy a single moment of it. Her mind kept circling back to the same impossible reality. She'd agreed to be someone's wife, a stranger's wife, for money. No matter how many times she repeated it to herself, it didn't feel real. Emma turned off the water and wrapped herself in a towel that was softer than anything she'd ever owned. Through the frosted glass door, she could see that someone had laid out clothes on the marble counter. Designer jeans that still had tags attached, a cream-colored cashmere sweater, undergarments still in their packaging, all in her exact size. The efficiency of it made her stomach turn. How long had Dante been planning this? She dressed slowly, her movements mechanical. The clothes fit perfectly, of course. Everything about this situation seemed designed to fit perfectly, to make her comfortable, to make her complicit in her own captivity. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? A gilded cage with a penthouse view. Emma stared at her reflection in the mirror. She looked the same. Same dark blonde hair now drying in waves around her shoulders. Same green eyes, though they seemed wider, more frightened than usual. Same scattered freckles across her nose. But she felt completely different, as if the woman who'd gone to work at that gala yesterday had been replaced by someone else entirely. The ring caught her eye again. She still couldn't get used to it, this weight on her finger that represented promises she didn't remember making. A soft knock on the bedroom door made her jump. "Emma?" Dante's voice came through, polite but firm. "Breakfast is ready." She took a deep breath, steeling herself, and opened the bathroom door. The bedroom was empty now, but she could smell coffee. Real coffee, the expensive kind. And something else. Bacon, maybe. Her stomach growled traitorously, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday. Emma made her way out of the bedroom and down a hallway lined with modern art that probably cost more than her yearly salary. The apartment seemed to stretch on forever, each room more impressive than the last. She passed a home office with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a formal living room that looked like it had never been used, and finally emerged into an open-concept kitchen and dining area. The kitchen was a study in sleek minimalism, white cabinets, black granite countertops, stainless steel appliances that gleamed in the morning light. Dante stood at the stove, his back to her, flipping something in a pan with surprising competence. He'd changed into a different shirt, this one a pale blue that somehow made his dark hair and eyes even more striking. "I didn't know you cooked," Emma said, then immediately felt foolish. She didn't know anything about this man. Dante glanced over his shoulder, a slight smile playing at his lips. "There's a lot you don't know about me. Yet." He gestured to the island counter where he'd set 2 places. "Sit. You need to eat." Emma perched on one of the high-backed stools, feeling like a child being told what to do. "I'm not hungry." "You're lying." He slid a plate in front of her. Scrambled eggs with herbs, perfectly crispy bacon, toast, and fresh fruit arranged artfully on the side. It looked like something from a restaurant. Your stomach growled when you walked in. "Eat, Emma. We have a long day ahead." She wanted to argue, to maintain some sense of control, but the food smelled incredible and her body was screaming for sustenance. She picked up a fork and took a small bite of eggs. They were perfect, fluffy and seasoned with what tasted like fresh chives and a hint of cream. Dante poured her a cup of coffee, added cream without asking if she wanted it, and set it beside her plate. 2 sugars, right? Emma froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "How did you—" "You told me last night," he said simply, settling onto the stool across from her with his own plate. "During our conversation at the club, you said you couldn't function without coffee. 2 sugars, extra cream. You said it was one of your few indulgences." The image felt wrong and right at the same time. She could imagine herself saying that. It sounded like something she would say, but she couldn't actually remember it. "What else did I tell you?" Dante took a sip of his own coffee, black, no sugar, and studied her over the rim of his cup. "You told me about your father leaving when you were 12, about how your mother raised you alone, working 2 jobs to keep you fed and clothed, about your acceptance to NYU for social work, and how you had to drop out after your first year when your mother got sick." He set down his cup. "You told me you felt like you were drowning, and no matter how hard you swam, the shore just kept getting further away." Emma's throat tightened. Those were her words, her feelings, Her private desperation laid bare to a stranger. I don't talk about that stuff. Not to people I just met. You'd been holding it in for a long time, Dante said quietly. Sometimes it's easier to tell the truth to strangers than to the people who know us. Less judgment. Lower stakes. Except the stakes turned out to be pretty high, didn't they? Emma couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Dante's expression remained neutral. You could have said no. At any point during our conversation, during the contract review, during the signing, you could have walked away. But I didn't. Emma pushed her eggs around her plate, suddenly less hungry. Why didn't I? Because you're a fighter, Dante said. And fighters don't give up when there's still a chance to win. I gave you that chance. Emma looked up at him sharply. You make it sound noble, like you're some kind of hero. But heroes don't make people sign contracts at 3 in the morning. Heroes don't manipulate desperate women into fake marriages. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Anger maybe, or hurt. But when he spoke, his voice was controlled. You're right. I'm not a hero. I never claimed to be. But I'm not a villain either, Emma. I'm just a man who needed something and found a way to get it that benefited us both. If that makes me manipulative, then fine. But your mother is receiving treatment right now because of that manipulation. So you tell me, was it wrong? Emma wanted to argue, to maintain her moral high ground, but she couldn't. Because he was right. Whatever his motivations, whatever his methods, her mother was getting help. Real help. The kind that could save her life. I want to see her, Emma said quietly. You promised we'd go today. We will. This afternoon. I have some matters to attend to this morning, and you need to be briefed on how this arrangement works. Dante finished his coffee and stood. Come with me. He led her to the home office she'd passed earlier. In daylight, it was even more impressive. The bookshelves were filled with leather-bound volumes in multiple languages, and a massive desk dominated the space, its surface clear except for a laptop and a single photograph in a silver frame. Emma moved closer to look at the photo. It showed a younger Dante, maybe in his early 20s, with his arm around a teenage girl. She had the same dark hair and eyes, the same strong features, but her smile was bright and unguarded in a way that Dante's had never been, at least not that Emma had seen. My sister, Dante said from behind her. Juliana. She was 17 in that picture. Emma heard the past tense. Was. She passed away 8 years ago. Dante's voice was flat, emotionless, but Emma could sense the wall he'd built around that pain. Which is not something I typically discuss, so consider yourself privileged. Emma turned to face him. I'm sorry. I know what it's like to be afraid of losing someone you love. I'm not afraid anymore, Dante said. There's nothing left to fear once the worst has already happened. He moved to the desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a leather portfolio. But we're not here to discuss my past. We're here to discuss your future, our future, for the next 6 months. He opened the portfolio and laid out several documents. First, the basics. You'll live here in this apartment. Your belongings from your old apartment will be packed and moved into storage. I'll have my people handle it so you don't have to go back there. Wait, Emma interrupted. I don't get to go home? To get my own things? Why would you need to? Everything you could possibly want is here, or can be provided. Clothes, toiletries, entertainment. My books, Emma said firmly. My photos. My mother's recipes written in her handwriting. Things that matter to me. Things that money can't buy. Dante paused, seeming to reconsider. Fine. Make a list. I'll have someone retrieve specific items. But you're not going back to that apartment, Emma. That life is on hold for the next 6 months. Emma felt her chest tighten. So I'm just supposed to disappear? What about my friends, my co-workers? What am I supposed to tell them? Tell them you got married, Dante said simply. Tell them it was sudden, romantic, unexpected. Tell them your new husband swept you off your feet and you couldn't resist. It's close enough to the truth. It's nothing like the truth, isn't it? Dante leaned against the desk, his arms crossed. I made you an offer you couldn't refuse. We spent hours talking. By the end of the night, you were wearing my ring. Those are facts, Emma. How we got there might be blurry for you, but the result is the same. Emma wanted to scream at him, to throw something, to do anything to break through that infuriating calm. Instead, she took a deep breath and forced herself to focus. Fine. What else? Dante returned to the documents. Public appearances. You'll attend events with me. Charity functions, business dinners, meetings with associates. Your role is to be charming, supportive, and most importantly, convincing. People need to believe we're genuinely married. What kind of associates? Emma asked carefully. Business people, investors, colleagues, people who have certain expectations about who I am and how I conduct my life. Dante's tone made it clear this topic wasn't open for discussion. And in private? When it's just us here? You have your own bedroom, the one you woke up in. I have mine at the other end of the apartment. We share common spaces. We maintain a civil relationship. We respect each other's privacy. He paused. And we don't bring anyone else into this arrangement. No romantic entanglements with other people. It would complicate things. Emma's cheeks flushed. I wasn't planning on dating anyone. Good. Neither was I. Dante pulled out another document. This is a credit card in your name. Use it for anything you need. Clothes, meals, whatever. There's no limit. Emma stared at the black card he held out. I don't want your money. I have the signing bonus. That's your money. This is for expenses related to your role. Consider it a costume budget. When she didn't take it, he set it on the desk. You'll need appropriate clothing for the events we'll attend. Designer gowns, jewelry, shoes. The sweater you're wearing right now cost $800. That's the world you're in now, Emma. You need to look the part. $800 for a sweater. Emma felt sick. She could have fed herself for 2 months on that amount. This is insane. All of this is completely insane. Welcome to my world, Dante said dryly. Now there are some rules you need to understand. First, you don't ask about my business dealings. Ever. What I do, who I meet with, the details of my work, it's not your concern. Even though I'm supposed to be your wife. Especially because you're supposed to be my wife. Wives who know too much become liabilities. Wives who know nothing can't accidentally reveal anything. His eyes held hers. This is for your protection as much as mine. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Protection from what? From complications you don't want in your life. Dante moved on before she could press further. Second rule, you don't leave this apartment without letting me know where you're going. I'm not trying to control you, but I need to know you're safe. That sounds exactly like trying to control me. It sounds like common sense when you're associated with someone like me, Dante countered. There are people who might see you as a way to get to me. I won't let that happen. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm sweater. What have I gotten myself into? Nothing you can't handle. Dante's voice softened slightly. I know this is overwhelming. I know you're scared. But I meant what I said earlier. You're safe with me. No one will hurt you, Emma. I give you my word. The word of a man who makes his living in gray areas, Emma said quietly. The word of a man who has never broken a promise. Dante stood straight. I know you have no reason to trust me yet, but I'm hoping that will change. Before Emma could respond, Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. I need to take this. Stay here. Don't wander around the apartment. There are rooms that are off limits. He stepped out into the hallway, and Emma could hear his voice, low and intense, speaking in rapid Italian. She couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. This was business, and it wasn't pleasant. Emma moved to the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. From this height, the city looked almost peaceful, all glass and steel and possibility. But she knew better. Down there, in the streets she used to walk, life was hard and messy and complicated. Up here, in this pristine apartment, life was just complicated in different ways. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, the phone Dante had charged for her. She pulled it out and saw a text from her mother. Sweetheart, where are you? The nurses said my treatment is starting, but they won't tell me how it's being paid for. Please call me. Emma's fingers hovered over the keyboard. What could she possibly say? Hi, Mom. I woke up married to a stranger who lives in a penthouse and operates in morally questionable business environments, but don't worry, he's paying for your treatment. She typed and deleted several responses before finally settling on, I'm fine, Mom. I'll explain everything when I see you this afternoon. The treatment is handled. Just focus on getting better. I love you. The response came almost immediately. Emma Catherine Carter, you're scaring me. What's going on? Before Emma could reply, Dante returned to the office, slipping his phone into his pocket. His expression was troubled, but he smoothed it away when he saw her. Everything all right? My mother wants to know where I am and how her treatment is being paid for, Emma said. What am I supposed to tell her? The truth, that you met someone who could help, and you made a choice to accept that help. Dante checked his watch, an elegant piece that probably cost more than a car. We'll leave for the hospital in an hour. That gives you time to prepare what you want to say. How do I prepare for this? Emma asked helplessly. How do I tell my mother that I've essentially sold myself for her treatment? Dante's jaw tightened. You haven't sold yourself. You've entered into a mutually beneficial arrangement. There's a difference. Is there? Emma challenged. Because from where I'm standing, it feels pretty similar. Then maybe you need to shift your perspective. Dante moved closer, not intimidating but intense. You're not a victim here, Emma. You made a choice. A difficult choice, yes, but a choice nonetheless. You decided that 6 months of your life was worth your mother's survival. That doesn't make you weak or mercenary, it makes you human. Emma blinked back tears. I just wish I could remember making it. The memories will come back, Dante said again. And when they do, you'll understand why you said yes. He gestured toward the door. Go. Get yourself ready. We'll leave at noon. Emma nodded and left the office, her mind spinning. She found her way back to the bedroom, her bedroom apparently, and sat on the edge of the bed. The view through the windows was spectacular, but she barely saw it. Instead, she found herself thinking about what Dante had said, that she was a fighter. Was that true? She'd always thought of herself as someone who just kept going, kept surviving, because there was no other choice. But maybe that was the same thing. Maybe fighting didn't always look like grand gestures and heroic stands. Maybe sometimes it looked like signing a contract at 3 in the morning because you refused to give up on the person you loved most. Emma looked at the ring on her finger, really looked at it for the first time since she'd woken up. It was beautiful in its simplicity, elegant, timeless, the kind of ring that spoke of permanence and promise, even if those promises were bought and paid for. She thought about the videos Dante had shown her, about the version of herself who'd laughed and danced and seemed so at ease. What had she been thinking in those moments? What had made her trust this stranger enough to agree to his proposal? The buzzing of her phone interrupted her thoughts. Another text from her mother. Emma, I'm worried. Please tell me you're okay. Emma took a deep breath and called her. Her mother answered on the first ring. Emma, thank God, where are you? What's happening? Mom, I'm fine. Better than fine. I met someone. The words felt strange in her mouth, but also strangely true. She had met someone, just not in the way her mother would expect. You met someone? Her mother's voice was confused. Sweetheart, what does that have to do with my treatment? The doctor said, he's helping us. Emma interrupted. The person I met, he has resources, Mom, and he wants to help. There was a long pause. Emma, what did you do? Emma closed her eyes. What I had to do, what anyone would do. I found a way to save you. Emma, I'll explain everything when I see you this afternoon, okay? Just trust me. Please. I know what I'm doing. Even as she said it, Emma wasn't sure she believed it. But she needed her mother to believe it, needed to believe it herself. I don't like this, her mother said quietly. I don't like the way you sound. Scared and trying not to show it. I'm not scared, Emma lied. I'm just adjusting. It's all happened so fast. But it's good, Mom. I promise it's good. After a few more minutes of reassurance, Emma ended the call and sat in silence. She thought about the conversation she'd have with her mother in a few hours, about trying to explain this impossible situation in a way that wouldn't cause more worry. How could she tell her mother that she'd entered into a 6-month arrangement with a man who operated in gray areas of business, a man who needed a wife for appearances, who lived in a world where image was everything and trust was currency? A soft knock on the door made her look up. Dante stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. May I come in? Emma nodded, and he entered, carrying a small box. I thought you might want this before we go to the hospital. He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant. A compass. My sister gave this to me when I first came to New York. She said it was to help me find my way when I felt lost. Emma stared at the necklace, confused. Why are you giving this to me? Because you look like you could use some direction right now. Dante's voice was gentler than she'd heard it before. And because I want you to understand something, Emma. This arrangement we have, it's not just about me using you for appearances. You're helping me with something important, something that matters. And in return, I'm helping you. That makes us partners, I suppose. Temporary partners. Partners, Emma repeated softly. Is that what we are? For now? Dante held out the necklace. Will you wear it? Emma hesitated, then turned so he could fasten it around her neck. His fingers were warm against her skin, surprisingly gentle for someone who seemed so controlled and distant. The compass settled just below her collarbone, a small weight that somehow felt comforting. Thank you, she said quietly. Dante stepped back, his hands in his pockets. We should leave soon. But before we do, I need to warn you about something. Emma's stomach dropped. What? The hospital isn't far from where I'm having a business meeting this afternoon. While you're visiting your mother, I'll be meeting with some associates in a private room at the same facility. It's possible you might see some of them. What kind of associates? The kind who will be curious about you, Dante said carefully. The kind who will want to know who you are and why I married you so suddenly. If anyone approaches you or asks questions, be polite but don't offer information. Tell them you're visiting a family member, and that's all. Emma felt her anxiety spike. Are these people dangerous? They're businessmen, Dante said, which wasn't really an answer. They're curious, protective of their interests, and not used to being surprised. My sudden marriage is surprising, so I'm going to be under scrutiny. You already are, Dante said bluntly. The moment you put on that ring, you became a person of interest to everyone in my world. That's why the rules exist, Emma. That's why I need you to be careful. Emma touched the compass at her throat. This is real, isn't it? This danger you're talking about. Yes, Dante said simply. But so is my protection. Stay close, follow the rules, and you'll be fine. I won't let anything happen to you. You keep saying that, Emma said. But how can I trust you when I don't even know who you really are? Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. My father built an empire on handshake deals and loyalty. He taught me that your word is the only thing you truly own, the only thing that can't be taken from you. When I give my word, Emma, I keep it. Always, no matter the cost. Even to someone like me, someone you barely know, especially to someone like you. Dante's dark eyes held hers. Because you remind me of why I started doing this in the first place. Why I built what I built. To protect the people who can't protect themselves. To make sure that when someone is drowning, there's someone there to pull them out. Emma felt something shift in her chest. A small crack in the wall of fear and resentment she'd been building. Your sister, she said softly. You couldn't protect her, could you? Dante's expression closed off immediately, but not before she saw the flash of pain. No, he said quietly. I couldn't, and I've spent every day since making sure I never fail someone like that again. Is that what I am to you? Emma asked. Another person to protect? Another chance to make up for what happened? Maybe, Dante admitted. Or maybe you're just someone who needed help, and I was in a position to give it. Does the motivation matter if the result is the same? Emma didn't have an answer to that. Instead, she stood and smoothed down her sweater. I'm ready. Let's go see my mother and get this over with. Dante nodded and led her out of the apartment. They took a private elevator down to an underground garage where a sleek black car waited, a driver already behind the wheel. Emma slid into the back seat, the leather cool and smooth, and tried not to think about how different this was from the subway rides she usually took. As the car pulled out into Manhattan traffic, Dante sat beside her, his attention on his phone, fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Emma stared out the window, watching the city slide by, familiar streets that somehow looked different from this vantage point, from this new life she'd somehow stumbled into. Dante, she said softly. Yes? The memories from that night. What if they don't come back? What if I never remember why I said yes? He looked up from his phone, his dark eyes serious. Then you'll have to decide, every day for the next 6 months, whether you still want to say yes. Whether this choice, the one you're making now consciously, is one you can live with. Emma touched the compass around her neck. And if I decide I can't, then we'll figure something out, Dante said. I'm not a monster, Emma. I won't force you to stay if you truly want to leave, but I'm asking you to give this a real chance. Give us a real chance to make this work. Us, Emma repeated. There is no us, Dante. There's a contract and an arrangement and a whole lot of money changing hands. That's not an us. Dante's lips quirked in something that might have been a smile. Not yet, he agreed. But 6 months is a long time. People can surprise you in 6 months. The car pulled up to St. Vincent's Hospital, and Emma's heart began to race. This was it. The moment where she'd have to explain the unexplainable, justify the unjustifiable, and somehow convince her mother that everything was going to be okay. Dante placed his hand over hers, the gesture surprisingly warm. Breathe, he said quietly. You've got this. Just remember, you made a choice to save someone you love. There's nothing to be ashamed of in that. Emma looked at his hand covering hers, at the ring that bound them in this strange arrangement, and nodded. She stepped out of the car, Dante right behind her, and walked into the hospital with her head held high. Whatever came next, whatever questions her mother asked, whatever judgment she faced, Emma would handle it. Because she was a fighter, and fighters didn't back down, even when the path ahead was unclear. Especially then. 3 weeks had passed since Emma woke up in Dante's penthouse, and she was starting to understand the rhythm of her new life. The mornings were hers. Coffee on the balcony overlooking the East River, phone calls with her mother who was responding well to treatment, and quiet moments where she could pretend this was all normal. The evenings belonged to Dante's world. Charity dinners where she smiled and played the role of devoted wife. Business meetings where she sat silent and observant. Galas where she wore dresses that cost more than her old monthly rent. But it was the in-between moments that confused her most. The times when Dante would ask about her day, actually listen to her answers, and share small pieces of his own life. The way he'd started leaving her favorite pastries from the bakery on Columbus Avenue on the kitchen counter. The nights when they'd both be working in the living room, him on his laptop, her reading, and the silence felt comfortable rather than awkward. She was starting to forget that this was supposed to be temporary. Emma stood in front of the bathroom mirror, getting ready for another event. This one a private dinner at an upscale restaurant in Tribeca. She'd learned to do her makeup the way Dante's world expected. Subtle but polished. Elegant but not overdone. The woman staring back at her looked sophisticated, confident, like someone who belonged in penthouses and private cars. But inside, she still felt like the waitress from Brooklyn who was playing dress-up. Emma? Dante's voice came from the hallway. We need to leave in 10 minutes. Almost ready, she called back, fastening the diamond earrings he'd given her last week. They were on loan, he'd said, from a jeweler friend. Everything in this life was borrowed. Temporary, not quite real. She smoothed down her navy dress, a simple sheath that Dante had picked out, saying it would be appropriate for tonight's dinner. He had good taste, she had to admit. He seemed to understand what looked good on her better than she did herself. Emma grabbed her clutch and stepped out into the hallway, nearly colliding with Dante. He steadied her with a hand on her elbow, and for a moment they stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, that same cedar and bergamot scent that had been on the shirt she'd woken up in 3 weeks ago. You look beautiful, he said quietly, his eyes traveling over her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. Thank you, Emma managed, hating how her voice sounded breathy and affected. You clean up pretty well yourself. Dante was wearing a charcoal suit that was perfectly tailored to his tall frame, a crisp white shirt, and a tie in a deep burgundy. He looked every inch the successful businessman, powerful, confident, untouchable. Except Emma was starting to see the cracks in that facade. The way his jaw tightened when certain names were mentioned, the tension he carried in his shoulders after difficult phone calls, the faraway look in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. They rode the elevator down in silence, a comfortable quiet that Emma never would have expected. The driver was waiting, and they slid into the back seat of the car. As they pulled into traffic, Dante turned to her. Tonight's dinner is important, he said carefully. The man we're meeting, Vincent Calabrese, he's someone I've known for 15 years. He's curious about you. Emma felt her stomach tighten. Curious how? He wants to know why I suddenly got married. Why I chose someone outside our usual circles. Why I kept it so quiet. Dante's expression was serious. He's going to ask you questions, Emma. Personal questions. Just remember what we discussed. Stick to the basics. We met at a work event, fell for each other quickly, decided not to wait. The romantic whirlwind story, Emma said dryly. I remember. Vincent is perceptive, Dante continued. He'll be looking for inconsistencies, anything that suggests this isn't real. So we need to be convincing. You mean I need to be convincing? Emma corrected. You're always convincing. Dante's lips quirked slightly. It's not all an act, you know. Before Emma could ask what he meant, the car pulled up to the restaurant. A discreet entrance with no sign, just a brass number on a black door. The kind of place that didn't need to advertise because the right people already knew about it. A host greeted them immediately, leading them through the dimly lit restaurant to a private room in the back. Emma's heels clicked on the hardwood floor, and she was hyper-aware of Dante's hand on the small of her back. A possessive gesture that looked natural, but felt like a performance. Vincent Calabrese was already seated at the table, a glass of red wine in front of him. He was in his 50s, Emma guessed, with silver hair and sharp eyes that tracked their every movement. When he stood to greet them, his smile was warm, but his handshake was assessing. Dante, he said, his voice carrying a thick New York accent. And this must be the mysterious Mrs. Moretti. Emma, she said, returning his firm handshake. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Calabrese. Vincent, please. Anyone married to Dante is family. He gestured to the seats across from him. Sit, sit. I've already ordered wine. A Barolo from my family's vineyard. You'll love it. As they settled into their chairs, Emma felt Vincent's eyes on her, studying, evaluating. She forced herself to meet his gaze steadily, to smile with just the right amount of warmth and reservation. So, Emma, Vincent began, pouring wine into their glasses. Dante tells me you two met at a charity event. Which one? Emma's mind raced. Had they ever discussed which event? The Children's Hospital benefit, she said, praying it was the right answer. In September. Vincent's eyebrows rose slightly and Emma's heart sank. Wrong answer. But then Dante's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. Actually, we met at the Mandarin Oriental event, Dante corrected smoothly. The Children's Hospital benefit was where we had our second date. Emma gets them confused because that night was when I knew I wanted to marry her. Emma looked at him, surprised by the convincing detail, the way he'd turned her mistake into something romantic. His eyes held hers, and for a moment she almost believed it herself. Fast work, Vincent commented, leaning back in his chair. You've never been the impulsive type, Dante. What changed? I met someone who made me want to be, Dante said simply, his thumb tracing circles on Emma's palm. Someone real. Someone who didn't care about my connections or my bank account. Someone who reminded me what actually matters. The words sounded rehearsed, but the way Dante was looking at her didn't. There was something in his expression that made Emma's breath catch. Something that felt genuine, vulnerable even. Vincent watched them both carefully. And your family, Emma? What do they think of this whirlwind romance? My mother was surprised, Emma said honestly. But she's happy for me. She's been sick, and I think she's relieved to know someone's taking care of me for a change. Sick? Vincent's expression softened. I'm sorry to hear that. What's the diagnosis? Emma hesitated. How much should she share? But Dante squeezed her hand again, encouraging. Cancer, she said quietly. But she's responding well to treatment. We're hopeful. Vincent nodded slowly. That's good. Family is everything, Emma. Everything. You take care of your mother, and Dante will take care of you. That's how it works. The dinner arrived. Perfectly plated dishes that were more art than food. As they ate, Vincent asked more questions, each one designed to probe and test. Where had Emma grown up? What did her father do? How long had she been working at Romano's? Did she plan to keep working now that she was married? Emma answered carefully, staying as close to the truth as possible while maintaining the fiction of their relationship. It was exhausting, this constant performance, this need to remember every detail of the story they'd constructed. But as the evening wore on, something strange happened. The lies started to feel less like lies. When Dante talked about their first conversation, about how Emma had made him laugh with her honest observations about the wealthy people at the gala, Emma found herself almost remembering it. When he described how she'd looked that night, nervous but determined, out of place but refusing to show it, she could almost see herself through his eyes. Were these real memories surfacing? Or was she just so deep in the performance that she was starting to believe it? You know what I like about you, Emma? Vincent said as they finished dessert. You're not trying too hard. Most women in your position would be all over Dante, hanging on his every word, making sure everyone knows they've landed the prize catch. But you're independent, comfortable with yourself. That's rare. Emma smiled, unsure how to respond. I guess I figure if someone married me for who I am, there's no point in pretending to be someone else. Vincent laughed, a genuine sound of appreciation. Smart woman. Dante, you chose well. As they said their goodbyes and returned to the car, Emma felt the tension drain from her shoulders. She'd survived her first real test, navigated Vincent's questions without raising suspicion. You did well, Dante said once they were alone in the back seat. Very well. Vincent's approval isn't easy to earn. Does it matter? Emma asked. His approval? For whatever this arrangement is? Dante was quiet for a moment. Yes, he said finally. It matters more than you know. Vincent has influence with people who could make my life very difficult if they wanted to. His endorsement of our marriage means those people will back off, stop asking questions. So I'm like, credentials? Emma said. Proof that you're legitimate? You're proof that I have something to protect, Dante corrected, Something worth more than business deals and profit margins. In my world, that changes how people see you, how they approach you. Emma turned to look at him in the dim light of the car. Is that what your sister was? Something worth more than business? Dante's expression tightened, and Emma immediately regretted the question. But then he surprised her by answering. Juliana was everything, he said quietly. She was the only person who saw past all of this. He gestured vaguely at himself, his clothes, the expensive car, and just saw me. Her annoying older brother who watched too many gangster movies and thought he was tougher than he actually was. What happened to her? Emma asked gently. She got sick. Leukemia. We tried everything. The best doctors, experimental treatments, specialists from around the world. None of it mattered. She died 6 months after diagnosis, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. Dante's voice was flat, but Emma could hear the ocean of pain underneath. I had all this money, all these connections, all this power, and I couldn't save the one person who actually mattered. Emma's chest tightened. Is that why you helped me? Because of your mother and your sister? Maybe, Dante admitted. Or maybe I just saw someone fighting as hard as I once fought, and I remembered what it felt like to lose. I don't know, Emma. I don't have all the answers. The car pulled up to their building, but neither of them moved to get out. The driver waited patiently, giving them privacy. The memories are starting to come back, Emma said suddenly. Little pieces. Nothing complete, but flashes. I remember sitting on a couch feeling like I was drowning, and then someone throwing me a life preserver. I remember laughing about something, I don't know what, and thinking, this person understands. I remember feeling safe for the first time in months. Dante turned to her, his dark eyes intense. That's good. That means your mind is processing what happened, accepting it. Or it means I'm just creating false memories to justify this situation, Emma said. How do I know what's real and what's just my brain trying to make sense of the insanity? Does it matter? Dante asked. Real or constructed, if the memories help you understand why you made this choice, isn't that enough? Before Emma could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed, the softness disappearing, replaced by cold alertness. What's wrong? Emma asked. We need to get upstairs. Now. Dante's voice was sharp, commanding. He opened the car door and practically pulled Emma out, his hand tight around her wrist. They hurried through the lobby, Dante nodding curtly at the doorman who started to greet them. In the elevator, Emma tried to ask what was happening, but Dante held up a hand for silence, his eyes fixed on his phone. Once inside the apartment, Dante immediately went to his office, pulling up something on his laptop. Emma followed, her heart racing. Dante, you're scaring me. What's going on? He turned the laptop toward her. On the screen was a photo, Emma leaving Romano's restaurant 3 days ago after one of her shifts. The angle suggested it had been taken from across the street, zoomed in, focused entirely on her. Someone's been watching you, Dante said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Following you. This was sent to me 10 minutes ago with a message. Your wife is very pretty. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Emma felt her blood run cold. Who would send that? Someone trying to get to me through you, Dante said grimly. He pulled up another photo, this one of Emma at the coffee shop on Bedford Avenue, taken through the window. Then another, of her walking to the subway. They've been following you for at least a week, maybe longer. Emma sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. This is because of our arrangement? Because people think I'm actually your wife? This is because someone wants to send me a message, Dante corrected. And they've decided the best way to do that is to threaten the person I supposedly care about most. But we're not, Emma couldn't finish the sentence. Dante knelt in front of her, his hands on her knees, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me carefully, Emma. As far as the world is concerned, you are my wife, which means anyone who wants to hurt me will see you as the easiest target. I should have anticipated this, should have provided better security from the start. That's my failure, not yours. Security? Emma's voice came out small, frightened. What kind of security? Starting tomorrow, you'll have a driver whenever you leave the building. No more subway. No more walking alone. I'm also assigning someone to keep watch over Romano's on the nights you work. Dante's expression was fierce. No one is going to touch you, Emma. I promise you that. Who is doing this? Emma asked. Who's threatening me? Dante stood, running a hand through his hair. The first time Emma had seen him look genuinely rattled. His name is Marcus Chen. He's... A competitor, I guess you could say. Someone who thinks I've taken something that should have been his. What did you take? A development deal in Queens. A very lucrative one. He was counting on it, and I outbid him. Dante's jaw tightened. Marcus doesn't take losing well. He's been looking for a way to get back at me, and now he thinks he's found it. Emma stood on shaky legs. So this is about business? About money and real estate deals? And I'm just collateral damage? You're not collateral damage, Dante said firmly. You're under my protection. There's a difference. Is there? Emma's voice rose, fear turning to anger. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I've been dragged into some kind of business rivalry that could actually put me in danger. Real danger, Dante. Not theoretical, not abstract. Someone is following me, taking my picture, threatening me. I know, Dante said, his voice rough. I know, and I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened. I should have been more careful, should have considered. You should have told me, Emma shouted. You should have warned me that being associated with you could make me a target. But you didn't, because that might have made me think twice about signing your contract, right? Dante's expression hardened. You needed help. I provided it. The risks were always there, Emma. You just weren't aware of them. That's not the same as consent. Emma was shaking now, adrenaline and fear coursing through her. I didn't consent to being followed. I didn't consent to being threatened. I didn't consent to any of this. You consented to being my wife, Dante said coldly. In my world, that comes with risks. I thought you understood that. How could I understand something I can't even remember agreeing to? Emma felt tears burning in her eyes, but refused to let them fall. You keep telling me I made this choice, that I knew what I was doing, but I have no memory of it. And now you're telling me that choice might have put my life in danger? Dante was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter, almost gentle. You're right. I should have been clearer about the risks. I should have made sure you understood exactly what you were agreeing to, but I can't change that now. All I can do is keep you safe moving forward. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the apartment. I want to see the contract again. The original one I signed. All of it. Dante nodded slowly. All right, but Emma, there are things in there that might be difficult to read. Clauses about security protocols, contingency plans, things I hoped would never be necessary. Show me, Emma insisted. I deserve to know exactly what I agreed to, even if I can't remember agreeing to it. Dante pulled the contract from his desk drawer and handed it to her. Emma took it with trembling hands and began to read, really read, for the first time. The legal language was dense, but as she worked through it, certain sections jumped out at her. In the event of threats to the client's safety, the provider agrees to implement necessary security measures. Emma read aloud. The client agrees to follow all security protocols as directed by the provider. She looked up at Dante. You planned for this, you knew this might happen. I planned for every contingency, Dante said. That's what I do. I minimize risk, prepare for worst-case scenarios, make sure everyone under my protection stays safe. Emma continued reading, and then she found something that made her breath catch. The provider has selected the client specifically for this arrangement, having observed qualities of resilience, intelligence, and integrity that align with the provider's requirements. She looked up at Dante, her eyes wide. You chose me. Specifically. This wasn't random, wasn't just because I happened to be desperate at the right time. You were looking for someone with specific qualities. Dante held her gaze. Yes. How long? Emma demanded. How long were you watching me before that night? 3 weeks, Dante admitted. I noticed you at a different event, a corporate dinner at the plaza. You were serving and you were kind to an elderly guest who was struggling with his meal, helping him discreetly so he wouldn't be embarrassed. It was such a small thing, but it showed character, compassion, the kind of person I needed for this arrangement. Emma felt like the floor was tilting beneath her. So you researched me, found out about my mother, my debts, my desperation, and then you orchestrated a meeting, made it seem like fate or coincidence, and convinced me to sign away 6 months of my life. I gave you an opportunity, Dante corrected, one you chose to take. Under false pretenses. No, Dante said firmly. Under complete transparency. I told you exactly what I needed, a wife for appearances. I told you exactly what I was offering, financial security and your mother's treatment. You made an informed decision. A decision I can't remember making. Emma's voice cracked. Don't you understand how terrifying that is? To wake up in a life you don't remember choosing, with promises you don't remember making, and now threats you never agreed to face. Dante moved toward her, but Emma held up a hand to stop him. Don't. Just don't. I need space. I need time to think. Emma, please, she said quietly. Just give me tonight. Let me process all of this. Dante nodded slowly. All right. But you stay in this apartment. You don't leave without telling me. Agreed? Emma wanted to argue, to assert her independence, but the photos flashed through her mind. Her own face, caught unaware, vulnerable. Agreed, she whispered. She left Dante's office and returned to her bedroom, closing the door behind her. The luxury that had seemed so overwhelming 3 weeks ago now felt like a prison. A beautiful, expensive prison, but a prison nonetheless. Emma pulled out her phone and called her best friend Jess, who she'd been avoiding for weeks. The phone rang 3 times before Jess answered. Emma, oh my God, finally. I've been trying to reach you for like 2 weeks. What's going on? Your landlord said you moved out, but you didn't tell me you were moving. Are you okay? Emma sank onto her bed, tears finally spilling over. Jess, I've done something really stupid. Something that might have put me in danger. What? Emma, you're scaring me. Where are you? Before Emma could answer, there was a knock on her bedroom door. Emma? Dante's voice came through. I need you to come out here. Now. Jess, I have to go, Emma said quickly. I'll call you back, okay? Emma, wait. But Emma had already hung up. She wiped her eyes and opened the door to find Dante standing there, his phone in his hand, his expression grim. What now? Emma asked, exhausted. Dante turned his phone toward her. Marcus just sent another message. He knows about your friend Jessica. He's watching her too. Emma felt the world tilt. No, you can't let him. I won't, Dante said firmly. I'm sending someone to watch her apartment, make sure she's safe. But Emma, you need to understand something. This isn't just about you anymore. Anyone connected to you is potentially at risk. Your mother, your friends, your co-workers. Marcus is trying to isolate you, make you feel vulnerable. Emma leaned against the doorframe, overwhelmed. What do I do? You trust me, Dante said quietly. You let me protect you and the people you care about, and you don't run, no matter how scared you are, because running will only make things worse. Emma looked up at him. This man who had somehow become the center of her world in just 3 weeks. A man she barely knew, but who knew everything about her. A man who promised protection, but had also brought danger into her life. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Dante stepped closer, his hand cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. Yes, you can. You're stronger than you think, Emma. Stronger than I think you even realize. And you're not alone in this. I've got you. And despite everything, despite the fear and the anger and the confusion, Emma found herself believing him. 5 months had passed since the night Marcus Chen's threats began. 5 months of heightened security, of looking over her shoulder, of living in a state of constant vigilance. But something unexpected had happened during that time. Emma had found her strength. She stood in Dante's office, arms crossed, facing him with a confidence that would have been impossible 3 weeks into their arrangement. I want to meet with Marcus. Dante looked up from his laptop, his expression immediately hardening. Absolutely not. I'm not asking permission, Emma said firmly. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. This threat has been hanging over us for months. My mother is terrified every time I visit her. Jess barely leaves her apartment. This has to end. And you think confronting him will end it? Dante stood, moving around the desk. Emma, you don't understand how people like Marcus operate. Then explain it to me, she interrupted. Because I'm tired of being protected like I'm made of glass. I'm tired of being the weakness you have to guard. If I'm going to be your wife, even a fake one, then treat me like a partner, not a liability. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Pride, maybe, or respect. You've changed, he said quietly. You taught me to, Emma replied. The self-defense classes, the security training, learning how your world actually works. You showed me I could be stronger than I thought. So let me use that strength. Dante was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but we do this my way. Controlled environment, my people present, and at the first sign of trouble, we leave. I know. Emma's voice softened. I trust you, Dante. I need you to trust me too. The meeting was arranged for the following evening at a neutral location, a private room at a hotel in Midtown. Emma dressed carefully, choosing a charcoal suit that Dante had once told her made her look formidable. She needed to be formidable tonight. Marcus Chen was younger than she expected, maybe 40, with cold eyes that assessed her the moment she walked in. Dante's security team waited outside, but inside it was just the three of them. "Mrs. Moretti," Marcus said, his voice smooth, "I've heard so much about you. And I've seen too much of your surveillance photos," Emma replied, keeping her voice steady. "We need to talk about why you're threatening innocent people." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not threatening anyone, I'm simply reminding Dante that actions have consequences." "Then remind him directly," Emma said. "Stop using me and the people I care about as pawns in your business dispute." "It stopped being just business when Dante cost me $50 million, Marcus said coldly. Emma leaned forward. "And how much has this campaign of intimidation cost you? The resources spent following me, sending messages, trying to scare us? What's your end game here, Marcus? Because you're not getting that development deal back. It's done. So this is just revenge. Petty, pointless revenge that's costing you more than you'll ever gain." Marcus's expression flickered. Surprise, perhaps, that she was speaking to him this way. "My wife has a point," Dante said quietly from beside her. "This has gone on long enough. You want compensation for the Queen's deal? Fine. We'll negotiate something reasonable. But the threats stop. Tonight." Marcus studied them both, his gaze calculating. Finally, he nodded. "I'll consider a proposal. But I want it in writing, Dante. And I want assurances." "You'll have them," Dante agreed. As they left the hotel, Emma felt lighter than she had in months. In the car, Dante took her hand. That was brave. Reckless, but brave. "I learned from the best," Emma said with a small smile. The next morning, Emma woke to find a document on the kitchen counter. Her contract with Dante. The 6-month mark was 1 week away, and he'd already prepared the dissolution papers, unsigned, waiting for her decision. She found him on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over the East River. "The memories came back," Emma said, joining him. "All of them. From that night." Dante turned to her, his expression carefully neutral. "When?" "Last night, after we left the hotel. I remembered sitting with you at that club, feeling like I was drowning in debt and fear and exhaustion. I remembered you listening, really listening without judgment. I remembered thinking that maybe this was crazy, but crazy was better than hopeless." She paused. "I remembered saying yes because I wanted to, because you offered me a choice when I felt like I had none." "And now?" Dante asked quietly. "The 6 months are almost over. You're free to go. Your mother is in remission. Your debts are cleared. You can have your life back." Emma looked at the ring on her finger, the same ring she'd woken up with all those months ago. "What if I don't want it back? What if I want this life instead?" Dante's carefully controlled expression cracked. "Emma, I'm not saying this because of the contract," she interrupted. "I'm saying it because over the past 6 months you've become my best friend, my partner, the person I want to talk to at the end of every day. This started as an arrangement, but it became something real. At least it did for me." Dante set down his coffee and took her hands. "I was supposed to keep this professional, businesslike, but somewhere between teaching you self-defense and watching you stand up to Marcus, I fell for you, the real you. Not the woman I thought I needed, but the woman you actually are." Emma smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "So what do? "We start over," Dante said. "No contract, no arrangement, just us, figuring this out like normal people." "We've never been normal people," Emma laughed. "Then we'll be extraordinary together." Dante pulled her close, and when he kissed her, it wasn't for show or for appearances. It was real. Finally, completely real. 3 months later, Emma stood in the same penthouse, but it felt different now. Her books lined the shelves in the living room. Her photos hung on the walls. This wasn't Dante's space that she occupied. It was their home. Her mother's latest scan had come back clear. Jess visited regularly, having forgiven Emma for the months of secrecy, and Emma had started working with a non-profit that helped families navigate medical debt, using her experience to help others the way Dante had helped her. "Ready?" Dante asked, adjusting his tie in the mirror. They were heading to a charity gala, but this time Emma wasn't playing a role. She was simply herself, attending as Dante Moretti's girlfriend, and eventually, if things continued the way they were going, his real wife. "Ready?" Emma said, taking his hand. As they left the apartment, Emma touched the compass necklace she still wore, the one Dante had given her when she felt most lost. She'd found her direction, not because someone had chosen it for her, but because she'd chosen it herself, and that made all the difference.